to se už děje, jo. Start recording. Mě by zajímalo, proč nejede a kde je meeting. Ale já nechci nic ukládat, já ho chci rozjet. Pane bože, to je zmetek. Otevř mi ten meeting, otevř mi ho. Start. No tak. A teď teda nevím, Logitech built-in mikrofon a headset. Jaký bude zvuk, jaký bude... Ukaž zvuk. Ještě jednou. Mikrofon Droid, mikrofon USB audio, to bude asi ono. Mikrofon USB audio, to může být ono. Dobré ráno, nevím, jestli mě, přátelé, vidíte, ale já teď tady chystám všechno na ten přenos. Tak, dej rekord. Hlavně nezapomeň nahrávat. Rekord. Tak. Kde je ta druhá potvora? Co to chce? Já nechci. Už to jede nebo nejede? Dobrý zvuk, jo, děkuju moc. Takže my jsme... Aha, mě to zabírá jinou kameru, tady ten krám. Já nevím, jak se tady přepínají kamery. Děkuju moc za potvrzení. Já bych na té OSB desce potřeboval přepnout kameru. Může mi někdo vysvětlit, proč já nejsem schopný přepnout tady kameru? Open preview, save preview, scale, bending, show, order, transform, copy. Já nechci, já chci přepnout kameru. Audio input, browser, color, display, image, media. A kde je video input? Application audio capture, input, audio. Color, media. Kde se tady přepíná kamera, krucifix? Jak je to možné, že to tu nemají? Mě opravdu odvezou do bláznice z těch programátorů. Proč tady není tlačítko kamera, přepni si, co chceš, tak jak na Zoomu? Já tomu nerozumím. To je něco neuvěřitelného. Jediný tlačítko, jediný políčko, kamera, přepnout. Není tady nic takového. Windows Capture. Set color, nechci barvu, mě zajímá input. Ne, tady prostě není přepni si kameru, tady to není. Enable preview, ne, lock preview. Já potřebuji si přepnout na jinou kameru. Zoom, Windows. No to bude stříhání teda. Přátelé, budete muset se spokojit s pohledem na tenhle ten krám, kterým já si ještě dubluju prostě to nahrávání, kdyby se náhodou cokoliv vykakalo. Já si tady nemůžu přepnout na jinou kameru. Já mám ještě jednu, kterou vidím na Zoomu a kterou vy uvidíte potom ze záznamu. Počkat. Aha, že by teď? Přátelé, možná teď. Počkejte, já se podívám na YouTube. Proč mi to ukazuje špatné? No to bude stříhání teda. Přátelé, budete muset se spokojit s pohledem na tenhle ten krám, kterým já si ještě dubluju prostě to nahrávání, kdyby se náhodou cokoliv vykakalo. Já si tady nemůžu přepnout na jinou kameru. Já mám ještě jednu, kterou vidím na Zoomu a kterou vy uvidíte potom ze záznamu. Aha. Ne, to je na prd. Proč je to tak blízko? Proč je to tak blízko? Takže Tyjo, tak toto mě teda, jak se teď s tou kamerou, jak já to mám teďka nastavit, počkat. Scale window, aha, canvas, ne, tady to je. Ne, to prostě není možný, jo. Ne, tak to není ono. Jak já zmenším tu kameru? Ne, tak to jsem v prdeli, to je... Já nevím, co s tou kamerou mám dělat. Tady to nejde nastavit. Tady nejde nic.
Proč je to tak blízko? Proč je to tak blízko? Ta žena?
Kde bylo to přepínání kamery? Tady.
Tak toto mě teda... Jak se teď s tou kamerou... Jak já to mám teďka nastavit? Počkat. Scale window, aha.
Jo, ale jestli toto bude na zoomu. Já totiž nevím, jestli... Ne. Properties. Tady není možné nastavit tu kameru, aby mě snímala, když přepnu na tu. Jo? Přátelé, když přepnu na Windows Capture, to musím mít, ale jak já tady udělám tu kameru? Canvas, to je blbost, to nechci. Tady nejde přepnout kamera, já se z toho zblázním. Fakt mě už odvezou do blázince. Když to zavřu, tak nevidíte vy nic. Ale já nevím, ale zoom, ale mě na tohle to nepojede zoom tady na tu kameru, tady na to, co teďka vidíte. Já mám na zoomu nastavenou jinou kameru, proč se to nepropojí? Já vás všechny moc zdravím. Já se ještě podívám, proč to prostě nejde. Proč to prostě nejde, kolik je hodin. Já už nemám čas na takový kraviny tady řešit. Proč ta aplikace, z které vy mě vidíte, když přepnu tu kameru, dobře. Toto je na zoomu kamera. A ta kamera je moc blízko. Mě odvezou k chocholouškovi už dneska, protože já se z toho fakt zvencnu, z té techniky zatracené. Člověk to myslí dobře a ta technika si ale dělá, co chce.
Já se ještě podívám, proč to prostě nejde.
Ne, já tam prostě nejsem. Já tam vůbec nejsem na tom obraze. Já nevím, co mám dělat. Já na tohleto nejsem... na tohleto nemám nervy. Co mi ta technika dělá? Crucifix. Vypadí. Proč jsem pořád takhle blízko na tu kameru? Já tomu nerozumím. Ukažte mi někdo, jak vypadám v tom... Aha, tady je to opožděně. Nebazírovat s kamerou a spokojit se na PC. Jo, no mně jde o to, aby vy jste viděli to, co já uvidím na Zoomu. Jo? Aby ta kamera, která mě zabírá z té aplikace OSB Studio, ta OBS, jak já ji říkám, aby zabírala i toho Standu Krapivníka, anebo ten zoom, což mám nastaveno.
Proč jsem pořád takhle blízko na tu kameru? Já tomu nerozumím. Ukažte mi někdo, jak vypadám v tom. Aha, tady je to opoždění.
Ne, to je dobře, to je opožděně strašně, dobrý. Zoom. Co tady máme?
Nebazírovat s kamerou a
lidi. A teď ty otázky, já už jsem nervózní, já už si nic nepamatuju zase.
Aby ta kamera, která mě zabírá z té aplikace OSB Studio, ta OBS, jak já ji říkám, aby
kolik je hodin?
zabírala i toho Standu Krapivníka, nebo ten zoom,
Proč já se tam jo, vidím se tam. Zapni to nahrávání, tak. Teď je teda nahrávání na obě strany. Tady se prostě, já se tam prostě nevidím v té kameře, já nevím, co s tím mám dělat. Ne, to není ono.
Teď ty otázky, já už jsem nervózní, já už nic nepamatuju zase.
Ta kamera je nakřivo. Já se z toho zvencnu, fakt. Já nevím, co s tím mám už dělat. To je prostě ten kábel jí táhne dolů. Proč je to tak velký ten obraz? Já to nechci tak velký. Teď už je to lepší, jo?
Já se tam prostě nevidím v té kameře, já nevím, co s tím mám dělat.
Ano, ten chocholoušek vím, že existuje jako kanál a já se nechám odvést možná radši k němu, aspoň to bude příjemné posezení a poležení u někoho, kdo má podobný pohled na svět, ano. To je, kolik už je, 54? Já se z toho zvencnu prostě, tak doufám, že se Stanislav Krapivník připojí. Ukažte světlo. Ne, to je hrozný. Máme tady slunko. Ukaž zprava. No, to je lepší. I když ta žárovka je tam vidět zase v tom záběru.
Ano, ten chocholoušek vím, že existuje jako kanál a já se nechám odvést možná radši k němu, aspoň to bude příjemné posezení a poležení u někoho, kdo má podobný pohled na svět, ano.
No, tak. Čekejte.
To je kolik už je, 54? Já se z toho zvencnu prostě, tak doufám, že se Stanislav Krapivník připojí. Ještě světlo? Ne, to je. Máme tady slunko, zprava. No, to je lepší.
Je ta. Jo, já už jsem si jednoho dal. Mám tady čaj s pramenem zdraví ze Slovácka a na tom zoomu to prostě vypadá jinak, ta kamera, no, ten pohled. Není to tak vyřezaný, není to tak přiblížený jako ten, jak to dělá ta OSB deska s tím. Já si dám s panem Krapivníkem balšoj stakan vodky a uvidíme. Tak, ty pod sem, ty potvoro 1.
Mám tady čaj s...
Počkej, kde to bylo? Který to bylo? Těch 10 milionů. Tady to je.
ze Slovácka a...
Milá maminko, rozkvétáš
Ne, tady mi s těma reklamama jděte do zadní části. Přátelé, já se omlouvám, vy jste měli tam, někteří mi dávali rady, abych si stáhl jiný browser, ten, teď nevím, jak se jmenuje. Já jsem to ještě neudělal, tak to udělám tě. A tady dáme... Doufám, že jsem mu to poslal. Kde je Telegram? Telegram, pojď. Počkat, zoom. Co dáš?
Přátelé, já se omlouvám, vy jste měli tam, někteří mi dávali rady, abych si stáhl jiný browser, ten, teď nevím, jak se jmenuje. Já jsem to ještě neudělal, tak to udělám teď. Tady dáme.
Tak, já jsem si chtěl tady dát. Ty si přepni kanál, pojď sem. Přepnout účet. Tak. No, funguj, potvoro 1. Ne, to... já tohle asi nebudu dělat živě, protože to divadlo předtím než cokoliv naběhne, to je prostě... Já vás, přátelé, ještě jednou všechny zdravím. Za 2 minuty by se měl Stanislav připojit a do toho mi ještě někdo volá. Jo, synovec už se ptá, kde jsem. No nemůžu, já přijedu až odpoledne. Všichni mě chtějí a já teď nemám čas. Tak, to je... Co jsem to chtěl? Lístky do kina, jo, lístky do kina. Tak. Stanislav. Tak, zobrazit vše.
Já tohle asi nebudu dělat živě, protože to divadlo předtím, než cokoliv naběhne, to je prostě... Já vás, přátelé, ještě jednou všechny zdravím. Za 2 minuty by se měl Stanislav připojit a do toho ještě volá. Synovec už se ptá, kde jsem, no nemůžu, já přijedu až odpoledne. Všichni mě chtějí a já teď nemám čas.
Tak se pauzní potvoro jedná. No jo, ale na jaký film? No, ale to já vím také, ale na co? No na to, aby mě tam pustili do toho kina. Ale to já vím také, ale na jaký film? No jaký film? Jo, nějaký ten španělský nebo italský, nebo jak se jmenuje. Na včera, dnes a zítra, co? Už mi z toho hrabe, přátelé, už mi z toho hrabe. A já vám moc děkuju za podporu. Já jenom doufám, že se spojíme. Teď se tam objevila ta ozvěna zase, ale to jsem něco zkoušel, jo? No, on je Standa ještě na nějakém určitě rozhovoru, on toho má strašně moc a než tam skončí, jo. Ještě pár minut, mám tady zprávu od Stanislava Krapivníka za pár minut, že ještě má nějaký telefonát. Kde je palec?
Já jenom doufám, že se spojíme. Se tam objevila ta ozvěna zase, ale to jsem něco zkoušel, jo?
Přátelé, můžu vás poprosit o potvrzení zvuku, jestli je tam zase nějaká ozvěna?
Ještě na nějakém určitě rozhovoru, on toho má strašně moc, a než tam skončí.
Já teda jsem z toho úplně blázen, protože...
Mám tady zprávu od Stanislava Krapivníka za pár minut, že ještě má nějaký...
Je tam ozvěna. Je tam ozvěna. Ne, Skote, teďka ne.
Přátelé, můžu vás poprosit o potvrzení zvuku, jestli je tam zase nějaká ozvěna? Já teda jsem z toho úplně blázen, protože...
Až 50% na všechno. Jarní výprodej na biliony.
Ježiši, mě tady nabíhají nějaký videa zase. Skote, teď ne. Já teď fakt nemám čas. Tak přátelé, dáme si znělku programu. Kde je nějaký zvuk k tomu?
Tak přátelé, dáme si znělku programu.
Aha, ono tam nesmí nic hrát, protože tam je hned ozvěna, jo? Přátelé, potvrďte mi, jestli je teď zvuk. Já jsem stáhl zvuk na počítači na 0. Jestli teď to slyšíte všechno dobře bez té zatracené ozvěny. To bych se z toho jeden zvencnul. Tak počkej, já si musím hlídat, jestli se mi tam objeví. Už je tady. Good morning, Stanislav. Can you hear me? Is everything okay?
Yes.
I can't hear you because my computer is making an echo sound. So I don't know if you hear me.
Yo, I hear you fine.
Check for sound fine. Here. Bloody hell. Okay, so is it okay? You can hear me, but I cannot hear you. Is that because I don't know what to do now because let me check this sound again. I'm testing this for so long, and I don't know if have you recorded.
Yes. I can't hear you because.
Okay, so let's get down to our interview. Welcome back again, and the questions will be basically the same, from our viewers mostly, and you are known to be living some time ago in the United States and working in the U.S. Army. So our question to you would be, how did you end up in the U.S. and what made you to join the U.S. Army? Why did you leave the Russia or Soviet Union back then? Was it with a family or by yourself already? And what are the differences between the U.S. and Russian army, for example? How was the life in the United States and Russia? If you can briefly tell our viewers.
We're recording, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, I'm having like triple recording today. Zoom, OSB Studio, and my phone is recording. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, I left. Obviously, I left whether I wanted to or not because I was 7.5 years old. So how did I end up in the military? Well, I grew up in the U.S. I wasn't planning to go into the military first, but I wanted to go, and I come from a military family. Let me try on my computer. It may be a better connection. 1 second. I'll go off and come back on.
Přátelé, jak slyšíte zvuk? Potřeboval bych nějaký, já ho vůbec totiž neslyším. Slyšíte Standu? On tady není. On mi vypadl.
Přátelé, jak slyšíte zvuk? Potřeboval bych nějaký, já ho vůbec totiž neslyším. Slyšíte Standu?
Tak teď jsem zvědavý, jestli to bude slyšet. Jo. Takže my jsme tam nebo nejsme? Aha, on se odpojil, má nějaký... welcome back. Yeah, let me check the echo sound here. Why is it still echoing, this piece of crap?
Okay. Yeah, you should hear me now.
I wish I could hear your sound because... Okay, so the question was regarding your life in the US as a US Army officer. What made you to decide to join the US Army? How did you even end up in the United States? Welcome back.
As I was saying, I came to US when I was about 7.5.
Yeah, let me check the echo sound here. Why is it still echoing this
family, had a
piece of
chance to
crap?
move the family out of the Soviet Union in 1979. Yeah, you should hear me now if you want to grow up in the US.
I wish I could hear your sound because...
I joined the military when I was at university, joined as an enlisted man.
Okay, so that question was regarding
in a parallel program between
life in the US as a US Army officer. What made you
training program, which trains most of the officers in the U.S. military. And in 1995, I finished my degree and became an active duty officer in the U.S. Army. Why? Well, I wasn't planning to originally, but I come from particularly my mother's side, I come from a very long line of officers, military officers. My mother's family is some of the oldest, is a very old nobility. I won't say some of the oldest, but it's very old nobility. You trace it back to around the time of Ivan Grozny, Ivan IV. Ivan the Feared, not the terrible as the British often mistranslated.
Yeah.
I'm not sure does the word Grozny exist in Czech?
Yeah, and we call him, well, in our, let's say, history books, he's called Ivan Hrozny. Yeah, so I don't know if that means the great, because that's all we have been learning in throughout, educational pipelines. Ivan Hrozny. If he was great or not great, that's up to you. We know nothing. The propaganda goes now anti-Russian propaganda for the last 35 years. So.
Well, Grozny, he did have this pseudo-religious piece where he used the aprachina to oppress his enemies. This was later in life. And what was found as part of his insanity was actually he was being poisoned by his political opponents. There was a test done on his hair, on all the emperors and czars' hair. The remains are all either in Moscow or in St. Petersburg. And Grozny had arsenic poisoning. So somebody was slowly poisoning him in his food. Because the hair had arsenic built up in it. And this was obvious, it had its toll on his psyche, on his mind. But Grozny left Russia, quite literally defeated, destroyed the Khaganate of Crimea's military, including a Turkish contingent at the Battle of Maladai, where there were about 45,000 Crimean Mongols. They're called Tartars now, but they're Mongols, and Turkish janissaries that were destroyed. He expanded Russia in a huge amount of territory by taking and unifying to Russia the Volga-Bulgar Khaganate, then the Astrakhan Khaganate. So he expanded Russia's borders to twice the size, and the Western Europeans were afraid of him. Thus, the bad press. He did not, by the way, murder his son either. Ivan is a modern version. Ivanovich died from there's a question whether he died from a fall or he died from a fever, but there's no historical record that he died from his father breaking his skull. That's something that came out of propaganda later. So my family's, my mother's family's roots go that far back on the Russian side, and there were German aristocrats on the other side. And then my father's family were enlisted men, but the 20-25 year enlistment, so they were enlisted, lifelong enlistment, basically, when you figure what the average lifespan was. So it came from both sides to some degree of military service. So I guess it was just in the blood. And that's how I wound up in the U.S. military.
You have a long history of military family traditions.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
you could maybe similar to Scott Ritter, who also spoke about his father being in the army and other people in his family bloodline. So interesting. That's why you have so much experience and so much knowledge, such a vast knowledge about the army matters and wars and stuff like that. And let me ask another question from our viewers first. And the question was, now my list froze. Anyway, it was about the Ukraine war. If it's ever gonna end and how it will end and when, if you have any predictions, and about the Ukrainian or the CIA laboratories that were found like the first year basically in 2022 already have been discovered. Like are they still in operation in Ukraine, and what are they, what they were or still are doing, if operational?
Yeah, they are in Ukraine. I mean, there's still more likely laboratories deeper inside Ukraine that are still operating. What were they doing? I'll give you an example. When a CIA or an American biolaboratory opened up in outside of Tbilisi, Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, there's an interesting thing that happened. Swine flu, African swine flu, appeared in Europe. Just so people understand. So swine flu goes between domestic pigs and boars, which are basically the same species. They can interbreed, obviously, so they are the same species. Feral pigs. It's deadly in like 95+% of the time, and the pig dies within about 2 weeks. So it was absent in Europe before all of a sudden appearing in the mid to late 90s. So basically what we're looking at is some infected pig decided to just run north, ran across the North African deserts, ran across I guess the Caucasus Mountains, and infected wild pigs in Europe, which led to, if you want to believe that story, or it got introduced by the Americans because it led to massive destruction of pig farms all throughout Europe, and the biggest exporters of pork in the world at that point were the Americans. So they just this is called that's called economic terrorism, economic warfare. Since this conflict has started, Mongolia didn't want to admit to it, but there was an American laboratory that moved to Mongolia. And then in Bashkiria, which is a Russian territory that borders Mongolia, in 2023, it kind of flew under radar, but I caught it and I wrote an article about it. There were two new species of ticks found on the local bat population. To find a new species of something like a tick, a parasite like that, is rare enough. You found 2 of them, and the interesting thing wasn't just that there were new species of ticks, is that one species of tick carried the Black Plague, which normally it sometimes can be found in bats, but it's normally carried in by fleas. In rodents, not by ticks in bats. So make of it what you want. But the second one was even more interesting because the second new found species of ticks carried the West Nile virus, which is a subtropical virus that's whose repository is birds, and vector of infection to human beings is mosquitoes. And here, from some of the subtropics, you're talking about northwestern Mongolia, and southeast, and that Siberian portion of Russia that borders Mongolia, Bashkiria, suddenly has a subtropical disease carried by ticks on local bats. Again, you're looking at this, how? And now this year, we've got an infestation in southern Russia of African ticks, which are much larger than the regular ticks and carry their own host of diseases. Again, where did this come from? This is how these biolabs work. And believe you me, what one of these biolabs are trying to do, Slavs, particularly northern Slavs, are Hopla group, male Hopla group R1A. Germanics are R1B. So this whole, you could even say this whole European fight for the last several thousand years has been between the two Hopla groups, the R1A and the R1Bs. And unlike Western history that says Slavs just appeared sometime in the 6th century after Christ, if you look at the remains in the different kurgans in Russia, northern Russia, Slavs have been in this area for at least 2,500, 3,000 years. Much earlier than what the Western, and the reason the Western Europeans say that is, oh look, you're barbarians, you have to listen to us, you just arrived and we've been here 1,000 years before you, so barbarians listen to what we say, and too many Slavic societies and too many people, Slavs believe this crap, and Slavs are being constantly manipulated by outside forces to fight each other. Slavs are half the white race, if you can say that. Quite literally, half the population of whites in the world are Slavs. Not Anglos, not Latins, not Scandinavians, but Slavs. And we're constantly being pushed and to happily go at each other's throats instead of unifying as some kind of confederation to just defend our own interests, not the interest of America or England or the Germans or whomever else. The Romans, if we go far enough back.
Exactly.
So that's what those biolabs. This is how biolabs are. And believe you me, if those biolabs could find a disease that can be linked to a Slavic chromosome, they will release that disease to kill Slavs.
Oh yeah. I can only imagine. I don't want to maybe imagine that, but that's basically what they have been working on for the last maybe 100 years, maybe even longer.
Yeah, that's the holy grail of this terrorist genetic approach, is to find chromosomes from particular racial groups to try to exterminate them.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable explanation. I wonder how I will translate this into Czech language, but I will get some vocabulary, no problems with that. Thanks to ChatGPT, we can now do more things regarding languages. I would like to ask you another question from our viewers that are interested in what will happen to the Bandera regime after Ukraine war is over, and what happens, or if there is a possibility of the French nuclear warheads TN-75 to be transferred to Ukraine on the M51 ballistic missiles, if that's even an option, and if it's even undergo, or has that been just a rumor about this? Well, how do you see that?
Well, I'll start with the nuclear warheads. I mean, anything is possible. If France wants to cease to exist at all and become a nuclear desert, we can make France into a nuclear desert. Because look, what most people don't understand, enrichment reactors, uranium enrichment reactors, they always leave an individual nuclear fingerprint, because they all operate in different. Okay, so you have uranium, like any element. You have uranium, and you have lots of different isotopes. Some highly radioactive, some non-radioactive isotopes, including of uranium, and you have it of carbon. You have every single atom has its isotopes. The feeder reactors that enrich nuclear fuels, all of these reactors leave their own fingerprint of their own isotopes. They're all a little bit different, and they're all registered in the UN. So if a nuclear explosion happens, you collect samples in the air of the isotopes, and you can fingerprint which reactor created that nuclear material, that weapons grade nuclear material, uranium at 90% enrichment plus, or plutonium, that was used for that nuclear bomb. So you can't hide it. is what I'm saying. The moment that nuclear explosion happens, you could say, oh, the Ukrainians developed it themselves. No, because the moment that the chain reaction happens, you have that nuclear explosion, the isotopes are released, and by the percentages of which isotopes, you can track down which nuclear reactor was the feeder reactor to create that nuclear warhead. And besides which, at this point, there's only two places they could get it from, and Britain's not one of them, because the British nuclear weapons, just like the British submarines, are not British. They're rented from the Americans. So, I mean, quite literally, Britain does not have its own nuclear weapons.
Of course.
It does not, nor does it have its own nuclear submarines. Out of those four, by the way.
What about the French?
Well, the French do. So in Europe, there's only one side that could possibly have provided anything like that, and that would be the French. And quite literally, if something like this happens, France will be exterminated. I don't have any other words for it. Russia will exterminate France off the face of the earth. And that will probably be a very good lesson to everybody else, not to go down that same road. I hope we don't ever go down that road. As for what happens to the Bandera regime, believe you me when I say this, I tell you this earnestly, the Russian military would like to go a lot faster. The civilian leadership is keeping the Russian military from going into a full war. This is so far from a full war. First of all, Russia is not in a military, not in a wartime economy. If you come to Russia, it doesn't take more than walking a few steps in any Russian city to understand this is not a wartime economy.
I was in Russia last May to personally experience the 80th anniversary of the victory, the Dzień Победы, the Parad Победы в Leningrad, the St. Petersburg, and I didn't see anything resembling just at least 1% of a war economy. Where is everybody's living their normal lives on the streets and restaurants and subway and on the squares, and so many tourists and from Asia, from Europe. I didn't see anything like exactly as you mentioned, so I can only confirm that.
The Russian economy is spending about 6 to 7% of GDP on this conflict and on the military in general. Wartime economy would be somewhere around 30 to 40%. Having said that, Russia is manufacturing approximately 1,200 new built modern tanks a year. The vast majority of those tanks, by the way, they don't go to Ukraine. They're being built up in tank armies for a future conflict with Europe, because it's obvious that the European leadership, outside of the former Austro-Hungarian countries, outside of the former Austro-Hungarian bloc, the vast majority of the European leadership really, really, really wants to have World War III. That's all they talk about it. They're bringing back. They either have brought back or in the process of bringing back the draft. In fact, there's a new law that came out in Germany last week that young men cannot leave Germany unless they have permission from the military, from the army, that they're allowed to leave Germany. This is basically the first steps of Ukraine turning into an open-air concentration camp for Ukrainians. We're seeing everywhere. So obviously Moscow is not blind. They may talk about peace, but they're preparing for a big war with Europe, a non-nuclear war with Europe. This, like I said, we're preparing. Russia's producing 1,200 tanks, brand new tanks a year. Yes, you see T-55s and things like that being brought into Ukraine, but that's because they're tanks, but they're not being used as tanks. They're basically used as direct fire artillery. They'll drive up into a prepared position on the line of contact, fire off their load of ammunition toward Ukrainian positions, and drive back off to reload and come back up. So you don't need a modern battle tank for that. It's pointless using a modern battle tank. You can use an old tank to do the exact same thing, to fire those rounds, and that's what they're used for. They're cheap. There's still a lot of them in reserve. And that's what they're used for. It's basically an assault gun, a direct fire assault gun mode. So that's one side. What if Europe goes into full war mode? There's going to be a very different Europe when this is over.
Yeah.
The German project, which I think was the biggest mistake, a geopolitical mistake, unification of Germany into one state, that probably could have happened in the last 2 years. Because that sponsored German imperialism, and German imperialism has always been aimed eastward, expansion into Poland, Austro-Hungarian lands, into what is today Ukraine, which of course didn't exist until 1917, 1918 in any form. In all these areas in the Balkans, that's what German imperialism was always aimed at.
Russia.
Right. So if this happens, if we take Berlin for a fourth time in 300 years, it's going to be Berlau, it's going to be Slavic lands again, and Eastern Germany is going to be Western Prussia will become Western Russia.
Yeah, without the P. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it's not a big difference. Just drop one letter. And that's we're hoping, of course, it doesn't go to that, but if you listen to these Western politicians. And the interesting thing is you see the cultural difference in the former Austro-Hungarian Empire. Hungary, Czech, Slovakia, and now sooner than later Austria. I think the next election will put the Conservatives very much into a supermajority. And you see these former territories are going, no, we don't want to play this. Brussels can go pound sand or jump off a bridge. We're not interested.
Exactly.
But the rest, the rest are mostly American-based puppets. They put them in place for a long time. If anybody wants to understand how badly terrorized and manipulated non-Warsaw Pact Europe has been, I challenge you to go read some information. There's enough of it on the internet and in books about Operation Gladio, which has been in effect since 1948 and still to some degrees is in effect now. And the stay behind the armies, which were then used by the CIA. Its way into control of Europe since 1948. First of all, utilizing the Nazis. And the whole concept was originally stay behind was the Volksstream and the werewolves designed by Hitler in the last years of the war. And they just they didn't replace a lot of them. They replaced their weapons caches, and they just kept the same SS types or the same Gestapo types running the programs. So, any of the Banderites, and this is the bad news for the European Union. If there is no big war, the European Union isn't destroyed by Russian tanks. We hope there isn't a big war. There isn't one. The European Union will be suffering for many years from the Banderites, because the Banderites are already flooding into once they've deserted out of the battlefields with their weapons already flooding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
The Ukrainian regime. So this is a situation, and they're flooding in. There's going to be at least 100,000.
Yeah.
Mexico. In fact, there was a report, I think it was in the Washington Post, about 2 weeks ago, that 70% of the weapons, heavy weapons in the hands of the Mexican cartels, we're talking RPGs, we're talking about Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, heavy drones, Javelin missiles, heavy machine guns, 50 caliber, for example, with 12.7 or 12.6 millimeter, are all coming from Ukraine. So Ukraine has become the drug, the black market organ, the black market children, the weapons hub of the world for all these black market activities. And as Ukraine is defeated, whether quickly or slowly, it's all going to move west into Europe. We are Europe, into the European Union. We're talking about Stingers.
Yeah. So, what do you think about Poland? Last time you mentioned Poland, that we know that they have lots of mercenaries fighting on the side of Ukraine against Russians. And is there any chance for the Poland also to join like a V4, V5, this Austro-Hungarian future body that would be like the Intermarium project to the buffer zone between the West and the East? Because we know they have a corrupt government serving the MI6 and the CIA, but the people there, at least half of them, are on our side. So is there anything you would say? And to how do you see our future in this without the EU? So, what is far as I'm concerned, we need to leave the European Union as fast as possible. Lots of mercenaries fighting on
Poland, first of all, they're not mercenaries. I mean, they're sheep-dipped mercenaries, but in reality, they're Polish regulars. Poland is, when an entire battalion quits and becomes mercenaries, they're being reassigned to fight and get. This is how they're getting combat experience. There's from the Russian side, the estimates are running somewhere around 10,000 Poles have been killed in this conflict. Second largest after Ukrainian. We are Ukrainian national. So there's and I don't know how many invalids, but Poland's got combat experience. Poland. Let's not forget that the Polish government has since the 90s built and sponsored on Polish territory camps to train and prepare the Banderites. Even though the Banderites massacred and murdered over 300,000 Polish civilians not that long ago, and continue to have this fight for second largest of the 1950s when the different Banderite groups were finally destroyed by the Soviet Union and by the Polish government. I don't know how many because they would cross the border freely on either side. For Poland, the issue would have to be a radical change in the government elites. There are Polish politicians that see this and they want it. For example, Brown, his party's up, I think now, surging for 13%, but it's still a minority vote. So you'd have to have some radical changes in Poland. I'm sure most of the people in Poland don't want to be cannon fodder for the West, but these Polish elites are also looking at Rzecz Pospolita, and that, by the way, will include chunks of Czech if they get their way. So it's very hard to imagine with these elites in place any kind of serious union, defensive union between the former Austro-Hungarians and Poland not being the next load of meat to be used against Russia. That's unfortunate. Once again, it'll be Slavs fighting Slavs because the West is pushing it, and the Polish elites that are in power are, well, I'm sure most of the people they are what they are. Hopefully, they will change. West, and we can coexist peacefully. Hopefully. And that, by the way,
again, or maybe the last question, we have 5 minutes left.
Your microphone's off. It's very hard to imagine with these elites in place.
Okay, now the last question, because we have 5 minutes left, would be any future you see with this for us as Central European Slavs to finally cut ourselves off the Western ties with the European Union, which is now completely Nazi overtaken. That's how I see it. And is there anything we can do as together to, let's say, get back to good relationships with the East, like the Russian Federation and other countries, like China and stuff like that? As I see it, we need to get rid of our corrupt politicians first, and then we can move on. What would be your take on that? Now?
Let's remember that Konev's army did a forced road march from south, or part of his army, from south of Berlin to Prague in about 2 days, when the SS forces that were exiting Prague started massacring the population. When the population rose up, and the Red Army marched in there with coming off of a battlefield in Germany, and forced marched to Prague to relieve Prague. The other thing that let's remember for Czechs to remember, the Czech Spring, which was set up first of all foremost by the CIA, that knew there was no chance of Czechoslovakia breaking out of the Warsaw Pact. They set people up, just like they set up the Hungarians before that. The Soviet leadership at that point was Khrushchev, and the majority of the units from the Soviet side, because they're Poles, they came in there, and these Germans, they came in Czech too. They're not remembered, they're only remembered as Russians, but they weren't even Russians, they were Soviet units that were stationed out of and raised out of Western Ukraine. So just let that sink in for a little bit. The same territories are run by Banderites, primarily from where these units that came into Prague were raised from and stationed from. Most people have no idea about breaking out, but that's the reality. Or that even under the Russian Empire, when World War I broke out, the Czech Legion, which was formed from Austro-Hungarian POWs for the express purpose of liberating Czechoslovakia from they weren't even Russians, they were at that point. So, is there possibility? Yes, but it has to rise up from Western Ukraine. Of just Czech, let that sink in. Just like it has more or less risen up. The same territory in Hungary. There's a lot of people who read comments. We want Russia to come save us. Why would Russia come save you? If you're just going to sit there on your couch and wait and eat popcorn and wait for Russia to come bleed and spend and bleed for you, it'll never happen. And it shouldn't ever happen. It's one thing to aid those that are trying but don't have the strength to do it themselves. It's another thing when they're sitting there and going, Iran, come over here and die for us. We're too busy to do anything for ourselves. Is there possibility? It's never going to happen. Yes. So the people have to take their own fate in their own hands. Russia will come help, but Russia's not going to do it all for you, ever. Nor will there be an interest. And the problem is if you stay in the EU long enough, they will overthrow your governments again. Like they're trying again to do with Orban. They will overthrow your governments again, and you will be used as cannon fodder against Russia. Because the EU could not live with Russia next door. And I'll give you a short reason for that. I figured that out back in 2002, 2001, that the war with Russia was an
Yeah.
but a third leader, my German got much better. At least I think so. But you know, I knew that, you know, sooner or later the Germans would figure out that I may be in an American uniform, but I'm not an American. And the biggest German nationalist, the staff sergeant, found that out. He had a very interesting reaction. This is 2001. This is the summer of 2001. And his reaction was, "Bratan, brother," you know, because the German nationalists despised the EU. We're looking at Russia. This is Russia 2001. Just came off of the Second Chechen War. Economy. But a third leader, my German got much better. At least I think so. But you know, I knew that, you know, sooner or later the Germans would figure out that I may be in an American uniform, but I'm not an American. And the biggest German nationalist, the staff sergeant, found that out. He had a very interesting reaction. This is 2001. This is the summer of 2001. And his reaction was, "Bratan, brother," you know, because the German nationalists despised the EU. We're looking at Russia. This is Russia 2001. Just came off of the Second Chechen War. Economy.
Přátelé, tak video se nám utlo.
But a third leader, my German got much better. At least I think so. But you know, I knew that, you know, sooner or later the Germans would figure out that I may be in an
A
American.
já teda musím přiznat se, že z toho, teď nevím, jestli jsem někde online nebo nejsem, teď se mi to celý tady ví.
This is the summer of 2001. And his reaction was,
Vůbec nevím, jestli jsme online ještě nebo nejsme. No, už nejsme. No, tak už to chvíli vypadalo, že to bude všechno v pohodě. A nakonec si ten program sám od sebe si začne přehazovat zvuk, přepínat si zvuky. Já jsem na to nešahal a najednou vy mi píšete, že slyšíte ozvěnu, kterou já ani neslyším. Jo? Takže do toho vůbec nevidím, proč mi to ten program dělá. Navíc nejde zase zvuk. Já už nevím, co s tím mám dělat, aby ten krám prostě fungoval normálně. To prostě není možný. Já odpínám externí mikrofon. Já tomu prostě nerozumím. Už opravdu nevím, co s tím mám dělat, aby mi to přestalo dělat tady ty nesmysly. Kde je? Už to slyšíte mě normálně? Protože je to se zpožděním, no, teď už jsem odpojil ty sluchátka taky. No, přátelé, tak byla to první taková vlaštovka konečně teda s nějakým nahráváním. I když ten mobil byl bez zvuku, tak to je k ničemu. A je to tady se zpožděním, protože přes ty dvě aplikace vidím ty 4 sekundy zpoždění, tak nedokážu reagovat okamžitě na to, co mi tam píšete, ale evidentně teda si ten počítač dělá sám, co chce. Bude to nějaký vzduch ve stroji, protože polovinu rozhovoru bylo v pořádku a najednou mi začnete psát, že je ozvěna a já jsem na nic nešahal, jo. Tak je to takový divný, takže se budu muset znova poradit s ajťákem, co udělat, aby toto se už neopakovalo, aby už prostě nebyla ani ozvěna, ani si ten počítač sám od sebe tu ozvěnu nezapínal, jo, protože já jsem, říkám, v průběhu rozhovoru na nic nesahal. No, já teď tady píšu ještě Stanislavovi rychle odpověď. Tak, přátelé, já definitivně, já to budu muset ukončit, protože mám... Jo, lidi s tou ozvěnou nevím. Při testování jsem já žádnou ozvěnu neměl a nevím, jak se jí zbavit. Budu se muset opravdu ještě jednou s někým poradit. Mám tady 3 mikrofony, 2 jsem vypnul, pak si to začíná dělat ozvěnu samo uprostřed videa, nechápu. Nevím, co prostě s těma mikrofonama dělat, nebo takhle. Poradím se samozřejmě. Když to bude od začátku, tak je to jasný, ale když si to ten počítač začne sám dělat uprostřed rozhovoru, to opravdu nevím, jak mu zabránit, jo? Jak tomu krámu zatracenému zabránit, aby to nedělal uprostřed z ničeho nic. Jo? Čili to je na další, to je na vyšší dívčí tohleto. Já vám moc děkuju za tu podporu, za komentáře, za rady. Doufám, že já se na to podívám potom celý, budu vám to překládat tak, aby to bylo celé v češtině. A budu to překládat tak, aby to bylo v češtině bez ozvěny samozřejmě. Mějte se krásně, já vyrážím na vlak, kolik už je 11 za hodinu. Já už teď musím jít, protože mi za hodinu jede co? Protože mi za hodinu jede vlak. Z auta teče nafta, takže ho nechávám stát na parkovišti, balím si svých 5 švestek a vyrážím za rodinou vlakenzí. Odcházím tedy na nádraží. Mějte se krásně, budu se s vámi těšit na další pokračování tohohle nekonečného seriálu. Další video bych viděl, že toto vám, jak jsem říkal, přeložím, nadabuji do češtiny. Ideálně, aby to bylo kontinuální řeč, abych vám to nekouskoval a když to nebude dnes, zítra, protože budeme taky slavit a tak dál, tak doufám, že do zítřka, do večera třeba nebo v pondělí, že budete mít tento rozhovor dabovaný do češtiny, tak, aby tam nebyla ta ozvěna, nebo aby já ji dám do pozadí ten zvuk, aby tam trošku originálu bylo, ale aby to bylo plynulé česky, otázky a odpovědi. Všiml jsem si, že Stanislav tam používal nějaké výrazy, které ještě musím dohledat, ty různé technikálie o věrech, i z naší, on tam potom mluvil, že o historii, jednak slovanské a jednak toho, co se mezi námi a Anglosasy dělo za ty staletí a tak dál, čili to všechno vám popřekládám a video tam bude a přeji vám krásné Velikonoce ještě jednou, krásný víkend, užívejte a budeme se těšit na další. On má super techniku, ano, děkuju, já vím, ale on dělá rozhovory jenom přes YouTube. To je strašně jednoduché. Bohužel tito hosté, ať je to Jeffrey Sachs, ať je to právě Stanislav, já jsem se i ptal sekretářky Jeffreyho Sachse, bohužel všichni jedou přes Zoom a já to budu muset poladit trošku jinak. Bylo by jednodušší přes YouTube, ale to většina těch lidí nedělá, není ochotná akceptovat, takže to musíme ještě, je to na mé straně, abych to poladil samozřejmě, ne na jejich, aby to do příště fungovalo už bez té zatracené ozvěny. Když už jsme to konečně rozjeli takhle daleko. Nicméně, tímto se s vámi loučím definitivně a budu se těšit na příští setkání, třeba 3.2. Mějte se všichni krásně a zase někdy, doufám, že už brzy, na viděnou, nashledanou. Zdravím vás všechny v Čechách, Moravě a ve Slezsku a samozřejmě na Slovensku. Nashledanou. Si to nepřepíná tu kameru.